on LinkedIn for you all and like give you some tips and tricks as we kind of go through it. So hopefully we've designed it so that whether you are brand new to LinkedIn, you get some helpful tips, or if you're like totally normal with it, I've got it down, that I still will be able to provide you some of that information kind of as you move forward. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, type it into the chat. I am more than happy to answer them, or Ken will be able to answer them as we kind of go through that chat as well. But I'm going to share my screen to kind of get started so that everybody can see it. And then really quick, I am going to adjust everything so that I can see people's faces and also still be able to see the chat. Chat, there we go. Okay, great. I think everything's finally set. So let's get started. So LinkedIn is a great way to be able to start managing your brand. So I don't know how many people are familiar, but your brand is kind of what gets you a job. It's really telling a future company, this is what I'm able to do for you. So LinkedIn has become a really powerful tool in being able to do that and be able to introduce yourself to a company even prior to like knowing like or seeing who you are. So through it right now, there's about 500 million users as of 2017. So there's probably even more than that of the number of people that are on LinkedIn. So it's not some small number. It's definitely useful to kind of think about. And in that, really LinkedIn is starting to become the place where your resume starts to vanish. That machines will drive gender diversity and recruiting. Something called LQ will be the next big thing. Like that is really what people are starting to look at. So for that, I have 3 trends to kind of start things off around the 3 predictions of what will be happening in the future, and being able to see. This was something that we pulled from an article by Jennifer Carpenter from Delta Airlines back a little while ago. But to start off, in lieu of resumes, technology will allow recruiters to pick up on behavioral signals from candidates, their skills, competencies, passions, everything that you could need. So the end for resumes is near. Now, I don't anticipate it really disappearing by the time that any of us leave DePaul, probably not even within the next 5 or 10 years. But it's definitely going to morph and change, and we've already kind of started seeing that as we are moving forward. The other piece is that machines will help the recruiters. We already are kind of seeing that, ensuring intelligent inclusion, improving the gender diversity. It won't be distracted by those little things of like human bias. So make sure that you are speaking as if you were to a machine is a good kind of thought and trend to keep in the back of your mind as you move forward. And then the last one is that learning quotient, that LQ from the first slide. It refers to the candidate's ability to come into a new situation, learn, and adapt. I also often call this like how fast you are able to learn a new skill, or if you make a mistake, are you going to kind of be able to adjust to that? So the online tools will help kind of test that within you as you're kind of moving forward. So with that, let's keep all 3 of those in mind as we move forward into this presentation. Okay, so ultimately those 3 predictions will boil down to the fact that recruiting will be shaped by candidates' potential. Not just what they've done in the past. So really being able to think about what are those experiences that you have right now, and what are the places that you're developing skills in to make it so that you are marketable for that future. All kind of goes back to that personal brand. What are you bringing to the table that makes it so that you're unique when working with an employer? Okay, so in that, what can I do with LinkedIn? So there's all kinds of different pieces to the puzzle. The first one is that brand story that we talked about. It talks about past, present, and future. This is what I've done in the past. This is what I'm currently doing. And this is what I hope for in the future. It also allows you to connect. I think that I presented with you all last year around networking and how networking is going to be kind of key to finding a job. LinkedIn is a great way to be able to do so, and we'll definitely talk about that today. And then research, it makes it so that you can find lots of different pathways with different employers and really see what opportunities are out there and like be able to meet the demand that it is and where it's at. Great. So parts of kind of the initial profile. So the first one obviously is that photo, headline, summary, experience, organizations, education, and we'll kind of be going over each of these as we move forward. So to kind of get started, let's talk about photo. Make sure that you're choosing a great photo. The rule of thumb that I often utilize when thinking about your photo is make sure that however you're dressed and however you are acting in that photo, you would feel comfortable doing the same exact thing to an employer you meet them the first time. So in that capacity, stay away from like those duck selfies or mirror selfies. Like those are great for other social media, but for LinkedIn, you want to stay more in kind of that professional sense. So in that, it really thinks about like being comfortable in your skin, but also be thinking about who your target company is going to be. So there's that pro tip in there. If you can show yourself in action, do it. So says a blogger who with multiple LinkedIn photos to see which garner the most attention. So in that capacity, since you're thinking about going into business, think of what type of company you're interested in. Are you interested in a startup where it's a little bit more casual, so you want that connection point? Or is it for like a financial institution where like professional dress really kind of comes in key with all of those kind of aspects? Just make sure that it's showing the true you and like however you want to dress in kind of that capacity. Great. The other piece is that headline. Make sure that you're writing a headline that rocks. In most of these cases, you really want to be succinct to showcase your specialty, value proposition, and your so what statement. So speak directly to your audience, be specific, worm in those important keywords as you're kind of thinking about it, and be creative. It doesn't have to be your job title. It doesn't have to be the company that you currently work for. The more specific you are about what sets you apart from the competition is what's going to kind of bring those employers in a little bit further. And then the other piece is that summary statement. One thing that I didn't kind of put in here when you're initially thinking, with the most recent update to LinkedIn, with a summary, they're only seeing the first 3 lines of your summary. So you want to make sure that those first 3 lines really grab the attention of your reader so that they are really being able to connect with you on like a deeper understanding and makes them want to click that see more button. So in this, remember that this is for people that are interacting with your profile. They can scan titles or locations or see and notice your connections, but they really turn to the summary to get to know who you are. So it's basically your public cover letter when you're kind of thinking about that. So search for some of those leaders in your field, like whatever your field is within business, go look at, see what they have to say and check out to see if they have any of those key terms to describe themselves. And really see what pops up when you're typing in those keywords. So some of it starts with research. Here are just some 3 key points. Make sure that you write your summary in first person. Like we all know that that's who's writing it versus like some professional like writer, or as it says here, unless you're a celebrity, a public figure, we know that you're going to be writing your LinkedIn. So trying to write it in third person just gets really confusing, and it's better to like have that personable sense and put it in first person. The other is make sure that you keep it short. don't say something in 5 words that could be said in 2, but also shoot for like 4 to 5 paragraphs in normal sentences. This all kind of varies a little bit and about who you are and what your brand is. So I think mine is about 3. I feel like that kind of shows everything of who I am and where I'm looking for. And then proofread it multiple times. Also have your friends proofread it, have your family proofread it. It's crazy how quickly your brain tricks yourself that after you've written something several times, a mistake is made. And it's not unheard of to be able to have that kind of come through and be a piece. So make sure you proofread it. That's like the biggest no-no, is when something doesn't happen. Okay, so the next section that often pops up is that experience section. So this doesn't have to be as detailed as your resume, but it also can be the place that if you don't mention something on your resume that you still feel is important, it's a great place to put it. So in that capacity, you are able to really kind of go through and tailor it and tailor your experience towards that future position. So if you need to expand on something or add further detail or talk about a project that maybe wasn't on your resume, this is a great place to do it. Within this, paragraph form is acceptable, that if you want to write a quick summary of what it is, awesome, that is fine. Just make sure that you don't want to include like a ton of information into it, because they're not going to sit there and read 10 of these. Like, think of your future self, save yourself some like heartache right now, keep it short and sweet right now, so that in the future you can kind of emulate that same style, rather than having to redo your whole profile each time you go through a new job change. From this, copy the work experience from your resume over to your LinkedIn profile. I've talked with a couple of people here, I think, in the past around, on your resume, you want to make sure that it's tailored towards the type of position that you want to apply for. So you really need to have a different resume for each of the different types of work you want to be doing. But how are you supposed to do that with your LinkedIn? So LinkedIn should still be tailored towards those future jobs, but this is a space where you can kind of meld them a little bit into kind of incorporating both different aspects as you're kind of moving forward, so that you can find the time to make it some of those connections happen. And then make sure that it's quantifiable as possible. So don't be afraid to show money, percentages, or numbers. Those are really what employers want to see, because you have to remember, they're treating you as the expert on your experience. So in that capacity, if you were to say, oh yeah, I worked with people, like, okay, well, did you work with one person or did you work with 300 people? And that's a very big difference. So if you are able to quantify it, it gives the employer a better perception of who you are and like what you're able to do. So it's a great way to kind of think about how can you quantify your experience that you've had. And you may need to rewrite some of it, but you should be able to take a few sentences and highlight your major achievements or accomplishments in that work. Great. Any questions thus far? I know that I'm talking really fast. Okay, cool. So the next piece is like a note about rich media. So depending on like which area you are within business, you've probably had to do some kind of either content creation, or maybe in a previous position, you've had to create a flyer or write a document or be able to do a presentation. Being able to put some of that into your LinkedIn profile allows for you to basically expand the perspective of that employer, so that it's not just you talking and saying things, but instead you're able to show your work. it's able to further enhance a lot of that experience that you do have. So down here, you're going to be able to see brainstorming, trust content. These are all PDFs that you're able to connect to your LinkedIn profile and be able to show more aspects of like who you are. This is really solid when it comes to like marketing type roles that often pop up. Or if you are wanting to show some of the skill set that you do have, if you're applying for an HR position, any content that you develop in kind of those capacities from like a previous internship are great to be able to put those on there as well. Any presentations that you've done in the past that really show off your skill sets, especially if you're having to do like a company breakdown where it's like, hey, I had to go through and research a company and really do an analysis of them. Great. Doing something like that, maybe taking out some of those keywords like names from that, but instead are able to just show like the full company. That's a great thing to be able to put onto your resume just to give a little further like piece of the puzzle. Okay. The next piece is like activity. So now we're shifting away from your actual profile and instead are talking about the actual activity that you're doing. So in here, whether you are doing a show of hands through your camera or whether you're clicking the little emoticon showing hands, how many people are actually active on LinkedIn? Post regularly, have conversations, anything like that? Nobody? Everybody's like, no way. Okay, I see maybe a couple here or there. So it's a really good example. A lot of times, most students that I run into don't. And it's because they're like, well, I don't know what to post, or I'm so busy posting on Instagram that I don't want to be thinking about what's on LinkedIn. Totally normal. I'm there with you. But this is a great way to start building out your network. It is also a great way to be able to show people what you're doing and get people onto your side and get some of those recruiters to like seek interest in you. So think about sharing any updates that you have. If you get an internship, that's wonderful. If you have written an article, that's even better. Participate in different groups within it. A lot of times those groups are a great way to share information and gain information yourself. But then if you see other commenters, a lot of times those people are relatively active. And if you show your passion for a subject, they're attracted to that passion. So it makes it so that people are more readily going to contact you or be more open to having a conversation with you if they've seen you commenting or seeing that you are active on LinkedIn. Some of these other ways are just like added bonuses. So sending direct messages to your connections and endorsing your connections for their skills. That's a great way to be able to like grow your content and like see if other people can be connected as well. But in many cases, the person who posts the position is revealed, providing you with the option to contact said person. You should also meet the team, which I'll show you kind of at the end of this presentation, some of those tips and tricks around meeting those teams or like seeing who else is kind of out there as you move forward. Cool. Okay, so any questions kind of about that before I show you some really quick tips and tricks that I have? Okay, cool. So let me jump out of this just for a second and go on to LinkedIn itself. Okay, so a lot of people come to me and are saying, well, how do I network? How do I find people? How can I like find somebody to connect with? There's 500 million people on LinkedIn. How am I supposed to know who I'm supposed to talk to? Totally normal question. So let me show you some of the tips and tricks that I learned as a recruiter when I worked in finance. Okay. Well, finance and accounting, let me say. So first and foremost, the first place that you should probably start is start with DePaul. So if you go to DePaul University, you can say, okay, great. Now you have this list, maybe, give me 1 second, my computer's decided to be slow. Now. Okay, so in this capacity, you can see down here on this left-hand side, alumni. Awesome. Through this alumni, you are going to get a ginormous list of 149,000 people that are alumni of DePaul that went to DePaul. So in this capacity, you can say, wow, there's a lot of people that are alumni of DePaul. But how am I supposed to shrink this down? Well, they give you all of these handy dandy places to be able to do so. So starting with, hey, I'm looking for somebody in Chicago. That's where I want to live, or that's where I plan on living. Some of the other really good ones are, what do they do? So it's like, oh, I want to go into sales, great business development. Oh, I want to go into consulting. Showing more, you're seeing that consulting pops up right here. So let's do consulting. That's a big one that students often talk to me about. And then you can see some of these other places that they work. So if you really have like an inkling, oh, I want to work for X company, seeing what alumni work there is a great way to do so. But now we have currently 2,682 alumni living in Chicago, working in consulting. So if we went and looked at this, we now have all of these different wonderful people that you can reach out to and say something along the lines of, hi, Sarah. I saw that I came across your profile on LinkedIn and I saw that you were a DePaul alumni. I'm currently a DePaul student and I wanted to reach out and see if I could have a conversation with you about your experience in global marketing and see how you kind of made the decision to go into that. Do you have some time to chat next Thursday? In that capacity, you already know who these people are. You can see who some of those shared connections are. So if you don't feel comfortable, you could always see who that shared connection is and then be able to reach out to that person through them. Reach out and say, hey, I saw that you were connected with Isabel. Is there any way that you could do an introduction between the two of us? Especially if it's a common connection that is a good friend. That is one of the easiest ways to be able to build that connection, because building out your network on LinkedIn is all about making it, showing a person that you have some kind of connection with them, whether that is a person you're connected to or a common interest or a shared school, a shared experience. Any of those are great ways to connect. So that's why I kind of start with alumni. Great way to connect because you both have that shared experience within DePaul. Okay, so that's one way. The other way is searching by the specific company. So does somebody have like a specific company that they are interested in working for right now that we could use as an example? If not, I can always make one up. That often comes up. I'll give it a second. Nobody? Nobody? This is your free chance for like free research right here. Okay. KPMG, awesome. Okay, so KPMG, awesome, right here, public accounting. So through this, there's going to be a ton of alumni. I already know I do this search quite often. So you're going to see, first and foremost, all of this information around the overview, the locations. If you go to the home for them, you're going to see all about the things that they're posting. These are the things that they are showing are important to them. So one, keep that in mind because that's super helpful when writing a cover letter or preparing for an interview. Talk about the things that they want to talk about, the things that they show importance, you should be showing that is important to you as well. But in addition to that, you're going to see over here, see all 181,000 employees. Okay, great. There's a lot of them in there. I mean, it's the third largest public accounting firm. I would hope so. Now you're going to see, great, this is a lot of people to be navigating through. How am I supposed to do so? Up here is this all filters button. Super powerful, one of the most powerful buttons you'll ever use. So you can be able to stay and start, you know, I want somebody in Chicago. Great. And then you can scroll down and you're going to see all of these other search terms. But you're going to see schools right here, and you can say, hey, I'm looking for somebody that went to DePaul. This is a great first step. Let's just start there and see what alumni pop up. There's 162 different alumni working in Chicago for KPMG. Awesome. Now you have different people that would be a good first step. So there's associate directors, there is an associate. So all of them are going to have different areas. So it's going to be beneficial to maybe go in a little bit deeper to see like what specialty they have so that it matches your specialty. But even if you just went and said, you know what, I'm going to use some of these as examples, great. You can be able to have different conversations with any of these people to make some of those initial connections. Here's another key. Don't only focus on HR, because HR runs the process. They don't make the decisions. So what instead you want to focus on is people that are working in the same field as you. So that would be anybody, like if you're in accounting and want to go into accounting, great. Anybody in accounting would be a great first step. And especially for alumni, anybody in accounting at the entry level or the level that you're going in as, great. That would be a good initial first step. Doing that same approach. Hey, I came across your profile. You're a DePaul alumni. I'm a DePaul student. I want to talk to you. Great, wonderful. But if you are like also looking for that job, connecting with some of those managers, especially if they are a DePaul alumni and a manager, it's just a triple whammy for you. So in that capacity, you want to be thinking about anybody that is going to be your boss. The reason I say that is they are classified as what's called a hiring manager. So a hiring manager makes the decisions of whether or not you get the job. So they are a great person to reach out to and say, but your approach is going to be a little bit different. So that instead of it just being like, hey, I saw that you're a DePaul alumni, I wanted to chat. Instead, you almost want to write them like a mini cover letter. So that mini cover letter could go something like, hey, you guys are awesome because of X. So all of the great things that they're doing, that you're excited about, that they are posting about, AKA looking at their main profile page, anything along those lines is going to be a great first step. Hey, you guys are awesome because you are blank, 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 blank. And then the next paragraph is, because you guys are awesome, I also anticipate you have these needs. So it could be, I'm anticipating that you're needing new associates come in because you guys are growing. That's a good example. Or I'm anticipating that right now with the ever-changing job market because of the coronavirus, I'm betting you need somebody that has a pretty solid foundation in accounting, but also understands technology and can grow and change with it. Great example. Anything to be able to say, hey, I'm anticipating that you might have this problem. And then I bet you can guess it. I just so happen can solve that problem. I just so happen to have those skills. Because basically what you're trying to do is set them up to be like, hey, do you have these problems? And like, yeah, I totally have these problems. And they're like, great, I can solve them. So really be utilizing that to your advantage. This is what recruiters do. This is what they are trying to pull from. They contact all the hiring managers because they know that they have the biggest needs versus HR who don't. So really kind of be thinking about that as you kind of move forward in being able to contact key people that you are able to like further connect with to have some of those conversations. And you should end that email with, I would love to sit down and talk about how I can help your company. It's not how, like, talk more about my experience. No. It's about how you can help their company. Because here's another secret. A company, sadly, doesn't necessarily care about your previous experience. They care about how you can help them make more money or be successful or insert whatever their goal is. So if you have that same goal, they're going to be like, great, like bring them in. Let's interview them right now. Let's skip over resumes. Because one of three things is going to happen with that. They either completely ignore you. It happens. LinkedIn is known and behold that only 50% of responses ever get replied to. Two, they respond back and say, hey, thank you so much for the interest. Please apply for this available position. And what that does is suddenly your resume goes from somewhere in the middle of the pile to the top because they've seen your name and they're anticipating seeing you apply for the position. So they're going to contact HR and say, hey, I want to talk to Ivana. She is like perfect for us right now. Or the third thing that they say is, you know what? I would love to sit down and talk with you a little bit further. How about this time? And suddenly you're skipping over the application and going almost right into the interview, where you're then able to talk about your strengths and skills rather than anticipate them trying to anticipate what they are. So really contacting some of those hiring managers can be super successful for you. So don't be afraid of contacting them. Just be intentional about contacting them. Okay. So that basically sums up all of those key tricks. Obviously, we can go more in depth about some of these other search topics, especially some of this title where you can talk to managers and key in on some of those managers. But that kind of covers everything that I typically hit on with LinkedIn. But what questions kind of come up? What else can I say to everybody or show everybody? Whether you want to unmute yourself and like call them out or whether you want to put them in the chat, either one is just fine.
Hi, I think you mentioned a little bit about this, but how would you go if you are pivoting from one industry to another? And you know, where you're pivoting to really has not much to do with what you currently do. And also, you may be in like the process of graduating, but you might not be, you know, obviously you don't want to let your current employee know that you're looking. Like, how would you go about that situation?
Yeah, really good example. So this is actually pretty common. The key thing or the key takeaway that often kind of pops up is really be thinking about the skills necessary for that future position, but then also connect it with the skills that you currently have. So even though they're not directly related in what you're doing, you still have similar skills. So an example that like often comes up that I use is students come to me and say, oh, I used to be a server, but now I want to go and become like a financial analyst. How do I do that? They're not related. One is I'm serving food. The other one is I'm working with numbers. Okay, think the skills that you need for the financial analyst. Okay, I need to talk to clients pretty regularly. I need to change, like adapt to ever-changing priorities. I need to understand numbers or finance and be able to do some of that in my head, kind of on the go. Okay, well, let's switch to a server. Okay, well, you talk to anybody and everybody as a server. Great, that's a skill that matches. As a server, you have to deal with like a lot of things thrown at you all at once. Great, that's ever-changing priorities. So what you want to do is instead of thinking of it as, oh, I'm only doing this, look at it from the perspective of the future job you want and highlight those skills so that they kind of attach in those same kind of capacities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Anything else?
I guess I'll ask one more. How important, or do you think it's beneficial at all to have LinkedIn Premium if you're trying to, you know, obviously change careers or find a new job?
Sure. So, and it really depends person to person. I have gone multiple years without having LinkedIn Premium because there's ways to be able to navigate around it. The biggest benefit of having LinkedIn Premium makes it so that you can, one, see who is kind of tracking you. Like if anybody clicks onto your profile, if you are showing up in any searches, great. It's good to see who's doing that on the statistics side. And then two, you're able to direct message somebody even if you haven't connected with that person. Now, those are very beneficial kind of as you're doing your job search, but are they needed? No, not necessarily, because you still get some of that data side of things by being able to look at your notifications and see who looks at you and see where you're trending. Two, instead of direct messaging them, you can instead send a connection to them, but don't just send the connection. Make sure that you do so on a computer and you can actually add a note to that connection and you can send them a message that way instead. So is it required? No, there's definitely workarounds to make it so that you don't have to spend that money. But is it nice to have if you have the money? Sure, it can definitely be helpful to like be able to do more searches and see more of the statistical data behind it.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to know, so like on a resume, you're kind of limited by the space of one paper, but on LinkedIn, we have opportunities to like keep putting in like our relevant experience. But sometimes, like for me, I have experience from like 2017. Do you recommend that I keep that in there or should I just take it out?
Sure. So there's two things that I would say. The first would be like, what is this like from high school? So basically the rule of thumb is that if it's from high school where you didn't have any interaction with it during college, then it probably shouldn't be on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile anymore. That employers are seeing it as like that doesn't equate to the experience that you would get through college. So that's one. Two, and this hopefully doesn't hit anybody in the room, but usually both on resume and LinkedIn, it would be only the last 10 years of experience that you've had. So since 2017 kind of still falls into that, I would totally include that onto like my LinkedIn or on your resume. The only exception to the high school rule, though, I just realized, is if there's any freshmen in here and you're like, I don't have any other experience except for high school. Great. Keep it on there, high school, maybe even into the first half of your sophomore year. But after your sophomore year, you should be gaining some of that other experience through college that would replace that on your resume.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So a quick question about putting or noting involvement in organizations on campus. Do you recommend using the organizations feature like under accomplishments or putting it under like experience?
Sure. So it really depends on how active you are within the organization. If you play an active role in the organization, so whether you are like the president or the treasurer or even like a membership chair, anything along those lines where you have an active job, I put it under the experience section, because when you compare what you do within an organization's like e-board or like leading the organization, it's almost equal to what you would be doing as a part-time job. So put it under the experience section. But if it's more like, you know, I attend the meetings, maybe I go to an event or help out at an event here or there, then I would probably put it under like an organization section as a whole. Cool. Well, while everybody's still thinking of questions that they want to answer, I'm going to quick launch a poll before I forget about it. If you can just go through and answer this, the Career Center is always trying to look to be better and like be as helpful as we can. So if you have any feedback on here, it's completely anonymous. I would love to be able to hear it or see it, but I'm also open to any other questions people have. And it doesn't have to just be about LinkedIn at this point. If you have other questions where you're like, oh my gosh, I want to know about how to like prepare for an interview, because I know that it's interview season. I think that that can be just as beneficial within kind of that LinkedIn space, as well as in an interview.
Okay, I have a question. I don't know if like this will be able to, you'll be able to answer this, but I was in a virtual event today, and the person from the company stated that they tend to hire people that they feel like in the interview they can trust to get the job done. How, I mean, just like in a general way, how do you get somebody to trust you in an interview?
Sure. So I guess I have a question back to you. How do you get your friends to trust you?
I mean, like, I just think that it's a totally different scenario in an interview because you don't know the person. And then also you have the whole, virtual aspect of it. So I think in person, it's a lot more natural and you can connect in, smaller ways that can maybe produce a trust. But it like virtually, I don't know. I think in general, it's probably hard to get somebody to trust you, but I did ask them how, and they told me, it's like how you answer questions. So I just wanted to know your input on that.
Yeah, so really it comes down to like the examples that you use. It comes down to kind of the way that you approach your questions.
Mhm.
And like how you like hold yourself. So if you came in and were like really shy and quiet and didn't speak very loudly, then they would be like, oh, well, have like the confidence to be able to talk. Like I'm going to be putting them in front of clients. How am I like expecting them to talk if they're going to be super quiet?
Yeah.
Me. Two, I would also look at how like a conversation is going in terms of an example where it's like, do you want an example where it's like super analytical, or would you rather have an example where you are like showing, hey, I want to get things done. It's really important for me to move my priorities forward. Then that's different depending on like who you would be talking to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Good question. Okay, so I think that we're kind of at time, but if you do have any last minute questions that kind of pop up, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Don't hesitate to shoot me an email. I'm happy to be a resource. Please even come see me as like a advisor. More than happy to meet with you one-on-one and talk about job search strategy or like further enhancing your LinkedIn if you have those questions that come up. But it was really a pleasure being able to talk with you all tonight. And I hope that you have a great evening.
Thanks so much for hosting this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.